Before I share this story, I want to share the fact that this is my first Reddit post ever. It's a story that I've only shared with 2 other people in my life, whom I'm very close to because, honestly, I sound batshit crazy trying to explain what happened to me. So I'm from Roswell, New Mexico, born and raised. I grew up dealing with the bullshit alien nonsense my entire life. The whole town is a tourist attraction for people who believe in aliens and believe there actually was a UFO that crashed here in the early 50s. Gift shops, cheap souvenirs, and just strange people galore. I like to think of myself as a very logical thinker, and I've had many strange things happen to me in the past, but I've always dealt with them in this kind of logically can be explained way, since I can remember at least. But what I'm about to write is something that I just cannot explain, and it's also something that I'm hesitant to even think about anymore. Now, I was camping with my cousin Cam, 17 at the time, same age as I was, his little brother Nick, 12, and my aunt and uncle. We were near Cloudcroft, New Mexico, up in the mountains. My uncle had just bought a new camper, and we decided to go camping with it for the weekend. The weather was beautiful, and me and my cousins decided to bring a tent and sleep in that instead of the camper so that we could be shitheads in peace. We set up our tent about 60 yards away from the camper, I'd say, and the fire was right outside of it. Towards the end of the first night, and after a long day of exploring, we all decided to lay down for the night. We were not camping on an actual campsite. It was a spot that my uncle had found some years back, and it was the perfect spot to set up camp though. At about 3 a.m., the fire was completely out. My cousins and I were still awake. Nick, being the youngest though, was trying to stay up to be cool with us, but ended up falling asleep. So it was only Cam and me awake now. But we were just shooting the shit, talking about hot chicks from school, brilliant ideas for things that need to be invented. Male birth control was one of them. Don't ask. And eventually, slowly started to fall asleep too. All of a sudden though, we just heard a blood-curdling scream from the distance. Probably about the same distance the camper was away from us, but only in the opposite direction. Me and Cam both picked up our heads up off the pillow and said, almost simultaneously, "What the hell was that?" It definitely wasn't a bear, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't a fox, because it was big, whatever it was. The closest way I know how to describe it is a mixture between a banshee and a rabid peacock. Its voice was deep and echoed through the deep woods. It let out another blood-curdling shriek, and we both sat upright on our blow-up mattresses. And immediately after the screech, it started clicking, an odd, deep clicking sound coming from the back of its throat. It was loud enough, too, to hear from a distance. We were obviously scared, and neither of us had no idea what it could have been. We waited a second, both quiet as a mouse. It let out another scream, followed by a series of clicks, but it seemed to be closer this time, maybe 10 yards closer. I looked at Cam, and he just looked as shocked as I was. I was trying to convince myself that it was just a bird of some sort, or a mountain cat. But then I heard it walking, and it was definitely walking on 2 feet, and I could distinctly hear it. Whatever it was, it sounded big because it was taking huge strides, cracking branches and leaves under its feet as it walked. It sounded like it was coming close to us at one point. It screeched and clicked loudly again, and I could tell that it was about halfway to us now. Suddenly, another scream or click came from another direction, sounding just as close as the other creature. It sounded more aggressive this time, more angry and dominant. The first creature then let off a series of clicks too, and then it hit me. They sounded like they were communicating. It was at this point that I became terrified, and so was Cam. I had an axe nearby, but I was afraid to get up and grab it. Then, both of the creatures started walking towards us, both on 2 legs. Not screaming or clicking this time too, but it sounded like they were trying to be sneaky, sneaking up on our tent. They were getting closer and closer, and the first one screamed loudly, and I could tell that it was roughly 15 yards away now, but so was the other creature too. After screaming, it started clicking again, and the other one clicked back at it. They were both walking closer and closer to the tent, and I could hear them both stepping on limbs and leaves, but I could also feel the ground thud with each step that they took. I was panicking, frantically looking for my axe while Cam was frantically trying to wake up his little brother. I couldn't find the axe anywhere, and I realized that I had left it near the campfire because we were using it to cut pieces of wood for the fire. Nick was not waking up, and they were getting closer and closer to the tent. Eventually, me and Cam froze. The second one had stopped about 10 feet away from the tent, but the first one was walking right up to it. As soon as it was right outside the tent, I yelled as loud as I could out of pure fear, "Get the fuck away from here, leave us alone." And it stopped. It was right outside the tent though, and I could almost see it in fact. It was huge as well. Tall enough in fact to lean over and look through the top of the tent if it wanted to. I could tell that it was really slim, but the creature would have been heavy because of just how tall it was. And for some weird reason, I could feel like an energy in the air. And although I couldn't tell exactly what these things were, I knew straight away that they were not there to just say hi or steal our hot dogs. I was frozen and they were right outside. The moon was covered by the clouds, so moonlight was no longer shining anywhere. I couldn't even hear it breathing, and it was just dead silent and dead still. The second one clicked from behind us, still 10 feet away or so from the tent. The first one didn't move. It didn't make a single sound, and it was probably only a foot away from the tent. My heart was pounding so hard that I honestly thought for a second that I was about to pass out. When, all of a sudden, it took 2 huge steps backwards, and the second one let out a scream so loud that it hurt my ears. I immediately burst into tears. The second creature took off into the woods, pounding the ground underneath it, running on 2 legs faster than what Usain Bolt himself could. The first one apparently turned around and just walked away back into the woods. I waited until I completely heard its footsteps disappear until I unzipped the tent, threw little Nick over my shoulder, and we just booked it towards the camper. We go inside and woke up my aunt and uncle, surprised that they didn't hear any of it. And that was probably the strangest thing about this. They had no idea what was going on and urged us to take our asses back to bed. We obviously slept in the camper for the next 2 nights, and I didn't leave the campsite for the rest of the trip, in fact. I don't know what we encountered that night, but all I do know is that whatever it was huge and looked dangerous. I don't think it was human. It definitely wasn't a bear, not a 4-legged animal, and it definitely was not a rabid peacock. This experience has honestly scarred me ever since as well, and whatever I felt that night was also just really weird. If you've listened to this whole story, I really appreciate it. I apologize for it being so long, but I just wanted to do the story justice. If anyone has any idea of what this could have been, then please let me know because I'm all ears. So I was hanging out at my friend's house for the weekend as usual. My friend, who we'll call Chris, says to me, "Hey, so I've got a date tomorrow and I'm supposed to go to this girl's house and have dinner with her and whatnot. Would you mind coming along and babysitting her little sister so that we could have some time to get to know each other?" Chris was a bit of a heavier guy and didn't always have great luck with the ladies. I could tell that this meant a lot to him, so I agreed without hesitation. So the following night, we hop in the car and Chris is looking pretty snazzy and we're off. We roll down the highway for a good 20 to 30 minutes or so and find the place pretty easy. Just your basic little suburban type area. We knock on the door and Chris's date answers and lets us inside. And we're immediately pummeled by the unmistakable stench of cat urine. You all know that smell, right? And combine that with the absolute disaster the house is inside, and we're aware pretty quickly that we're already cooking up a date from hell. Nevertheless, Chris seems excited and pretty unfazed by it. Now, if I were to go into every detail of this bizarre night, we'd be here till the sun burned out, so I'll give the highlights in a bullet point list. So the little sister was my age and was severely mentally ill. Chris's date decided that I was a better option and spent the entire night literally trying to get into my pants when Chris wasn't looking. The sisters got into an extremely violent fight, complete with knives drawn, and the sister took a handful of mystery pills. We didn't see a single cat the entire time, which was weird as well. Chris's date suggested to me a threesome with her and her sister at one point. And now, somehow, for some reason, we were polite, funny, and amicable throughout this whole white trash fever dream. But both Chris and I were extremely uncomfortable, and we needed to get out ASAP. We didn't want to anger these trailer park witches though, so we thought that we'd have to be sly. So the four of us were all having a little conversation in the living room after the fight with the knives, when the little sister compared Chris and I to Batman and Robin at one point. And without skipping a fucking beat, I yelled out, "Batman, look, Commissioner Gordon has the bat signal on." And then we just fucking ran. We ran so fast, right out the front door. They were all still laughing at our little goof until we started the car and just started peeling out. The last thing I heard from Chris's date was, "Hey, what the fuck?" And this is where things got just really weird. So we sped away as fast as we could in Chris's beat-up sedan. We'd take the first left, second right, and we're back on the main road to the highway. Only 10 minutes later, we're still in this neighborhood. We passed by the Hell House twice too, and we both knew exactly how to get out of this tiny neighborhood, and yet somehow we kind of got lost in it. We passed the house again and tried to take that first left and second right path again, and this time it works, which was really weird, but whatever, we're both stressed out, you know. We get back on the highway, headed home, both of us talking a mile a minute about the awful night that we just put behind us, and we even started laughing about it at one point. Our exit comes up, and we get off. It starts slipping around to the main road, and the next thing we know, we're back on the highway, 3 exits back. Now, I honestly thought that I was losing my mind, and I didn't say anything. Like I said, stressed out, a little tired, who knows. We hit the exit again though, get off, loop around, and we're back on the highway 3 exits back again. I honestly can't explain the sensation of it too. We perceived no lost time or any sense of lost consciousness. We were simply getting off the highway and then, in an instant, we're like 3 to 4 miles back from the exit. The clock was moving normally and the gas gauge was noticeably declined as well. The second time it happened, I mentioned it to Chris and he says, "Yeah, I thought that I was just losing my mind, dude," and starts driving slower. The car ride is silent now, we're both just too weirded out to talk, and super alert as if paying real close attention will stop it from happening again. But there was no such luck. And after attempt 3, we started going faster, and in total it happened 5 or 6 times, and by that point, we were pretty hysterical, just screaming nonsense and speeding down an apparently eternal stretch of highway. We decided to pull off on a different exit and we get our wits together, hit a stoplight, and all 4 signals are red. We're too tired to even think about just running the light. There are no other cars around. Chris and I sat there and just laughed like maniacs for a minute or two, unable to process the experience any other way. We decided to stop and get some gas and maybe try taking the long way home instead. I mean, what else can you do when you're stuck in the Twilight Zone, right? We head down the road and accidentally miss the turn for the gas station. No big deal. Chris takes the next left into a neighborhood to flip around. And I shit you not, we made that left turn and we were suddenly pulling right back up to the house from earlier. Now, I know for a fact that the exit that we took was a good 10 miles from the neighborhood that Chris's date was in. In fact, I've been down that road many times in the last 8 years. I looked behind us and the road that we turned off was not there anymore. We apparently traveled 10 or more miles in the span of about a second. To end this quickly, Chris just broke and started driving like a fucking maniac. I was just as unhinged at this point, and for some reason when we reached our exit this time, everything just went back to normal. We got back to Chris's house shortly afterwards and slept for the most of the following day. We've only spoken about the experience once or twice since then, always in passing and never really in depth. The only answers that we've ever thought of were either A, his date was a witch and hexed us when we left, B, we experienced a legitimate break in space and time, or C, some kind of a spontaneous shared hallucination of some sort. If anyone does have a decent explanation or similar experience, then I sure would love to hear it. Thanks. I don't think I'm going nuts, but 3 weeks ago, I started seeing a series of just weird things happening in my house. I'm currently living with my girlfriend and my little brother because he didn't want to stay in the mess of a house where our father lives in. Let me say too that the place that I'm living at was left by my grandmother. It is a pretty old house, rebuilt around the 1950s, and it's been in the family since her great-great-grandmother emigrated from Spain to Portugal. But anyway, around the 14th of June, I came back from work to see my girlfriend, laying exhausted on the sofa. Fur, my little brother, was upstairs playing video games, and I greeted them both and went to make a snack for my girlfriend and I. About 10 minutes after, the girlfriend opened the door, greeting us loudly. I just stared at her as if she was crazy and told her to quit the joke as I was in no mood for jokes. She stared back, confused, and told me that she had just arrived because she had had a really rough day at work and didn't want to bring any tasks home. I told her that I found her at the sofa when I came in and she just kind of laughed it off. At the time, I related this to just being sleep deprived and confused, but nowadays, I'm not so sure. So the next Monday, I went home to eat. I work fairly close to my home, and my brother was at the top of the stairs, just staring at me. I waved to him and walked towards the kitchen, but then I remembered that he was on a school trip outside of town. Upon realizing this too, I went back and searched all of the rooms. It's a relatively big house, but he was just nowhere to be found. I again related this to a weird hallucination, but the image of the guy was just so clear. Thursday, I got the day off. Brother was in his room, and a clear calling of my name took me downstairs. I clearly had heard my girlfriend calling me from the kitchen, so I went to check, and when I got there, nobody was there. Apparently the place where she works doesn't celebrate the holiday that we were celebrating, and she had gone out for about 2 hours before whatever it was downstairs had called me. On Friday, coming home from work, the same thing. My girlfriend was at the top of the stairs just staring at me, and I stared back and we locked eyes for like 10 seconds. It felt like minutes, and she just turned around and went towards our room. I again called for her and even searched all the rooms, but there was just nobody but my brother and I there. She came back about an hour later too because her car had run out of battery at the parking lot and had to call her father to help her out. It was at this point that I decided to tell her what I had seen. She was a skeptic at first, but then she told me to go and see a doctor. I got an appointment for Monday and they found nothing but the previously diagnosed stuff. No schizophrenia and really no reason to see hallucinations. The doctor also attributed everything to an uncommon series of hallucinations related to sleep deprivation and told me to just sleep better in the end. Then, Wednesday comes around and I was cooking the meal when my girlfriend walked in on me cooking and she just went pale. Because she said that she had seen me at the stairwell when she came down. Let me clarify too that there is only one stairwell going to the top floor, and only one corridor going from that stairwell to the kitchen, so there was just no way that I just got there faster than her. Things like this have just not stopped happening too. I even called a priest to bless the house, and nothing has changed. My brother has seen both my girlfriend and I at times where we shouldn't be there, and things are disappearing around the house now too. I really don't know what to do, and I hope that somebody with more experience in this field can help me out, because at the moment, I'm lost. G'day mates, it's Busta here. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you would like to help me out, then please go ahead and watch another video by clicking on a card on the screen. As always guys, thanks for all the love and support, and I'll see you mates in the next one.